CFO Dickinson is logged in. Yep. Good evening. First joint session, March 19th, 2025 will come to order. This meeting will take place 6 p.m. in the Alden Memorial Chambers, second floor, Medford City Hall, 85 George P. Hassett Drive, Medford, Mass, and via Zoom. You can also watch live, Channel 22, Channel 43, or YouTube and medfordtv.org. To submit written comments, I have the, oh, I actually printed the, I printed the city council agenda, I think. So to submit written comments, please email ahurtubise@medford-ma.gov. I think that should suffice. And yep, if we can call the roll of the school committee, please. Member Rousseau?
Member Branley.
Present.
Member Graham. Present. Member Ntapa.
Here.
Member Olapati.
Here.
Member Reinfeld. Here. Member Rousseau present. Mayor Longo-Kern.
Present, 7 present, 0 absent. The entire school committee is here.
Mr. Kirk, if you could please call the roll for the council.
Council Callahan. Vice President Collins.
Present.
Council Lazaro. Council Lemming.
Present.
Council Scarpelli.
Present.
Council Singh.
Present.
President Bears.
Present, 7 present, none absent. Meeting's called to order.
Yeah,
First
yep.
matter is the joint rules. Have folks had time to read the joint rules? Are there any comments from members of the council on the joint rules?
Motion to waive the reading.
We could do that. Yes.
Yep.
Maybe we make it a motion to waive the reading and approve, and then we can discuss it. Okay, then we don't have to vote 14 times. All right, so I have a motion and a second on the council. Is there a motion and a second on the school committee?
Yes.
Great. All right, any discussion from members of the council on the joint rules as proposed?
Any from the school committee? Nope.
Seeing none on the motion of Councilor Callahan, seconded by Councilor Lazaro. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll to approve the rules.
Council Callahan. Yes. Vice President Collins.
Yes.
Councilor Lazaro. Yes. Council Lemming.
Yes.
Council Scarpelli.
Yes.
Council Singh.
Yes.
President Bears.
Yes, 7 affirmative, none in the negative. Motion passes the council.
Motion has also taken place and seconded for the school committee. Member Rousseau, if you could call the roll.
Certainly. Member Branley.
Yes.
Member Graham. Yes. Member Ntapa.
Yes.
Member Olapati.
Yes.
Member Reinfeld. Yes. Member Rousseau, yes. Mayor Longo-Kern.
Yes, 7 the affirmative, 0 in the negative. Motion passes. So rules are adopted for tonight's meeting and moving forward. Thank you. We have a resolution by President Bears to discuss the schedule of annual budget process for fiscal year 2026.
And whatever it is on your agenda, did you have a number? Or? Oh, no, on the school committee version of this. Okay.
25039 on the school committee agenda. And tonight, I don't know if you want to talk about, tonight we have Chief of Staff Nina Nazarian and CFO Bob Dickinson from the city of Medford. And when we're ready, CFO Dickinson has a slideshow presentation and can present an overview of the city's finances.
Great. We had a meeting last night on recommendations. We're planning to send them over to your office, this council to the mayor. I know you guys have had a budget process. I'll go to member, well, you should go to member Graham.
Member Graham?
Yes, we have had a preliminary budget meeting where we've started talking about the school committee budget from an enrollment projection standpoint and from a funding revenue sources perspective. So that has already happened. We have a meeting tomorrow night where we will hear from our finance office and the superintendent about their recommended budget. And our budget hearing will be held on Monday, the 24th. Thank you. My days are running together, but we will have a budget hearing on the 24th. And we will either take action to send that to the mayor that evening or in a subsequent meeting the first week of April. So we are slightly off what our intended target was, and we discussed that back in January, but we had to make way for the budgeting process for the supplemental budget for FY '25. So that sort of took priority in January. We'll be back on track after that and be ready to submit to the mayor our request to the municipality in early April.
Is that Member Reinfeld?
Nope.
Have you requested? For some reason, Mike 5 has a request on it. All good.
Great.
Any-
No other comments or questions? We'll start the presentation. CFO.
Hoping all the technology actually works. No, I know this from Nantucket Town meetings when people have the microphone here. It's like, no, pretend you're Mick Jagger. All right, so I'm trying to share my screen. Is that working? Share. Okay. Okay. Now, if I can actually make all the rest of this stuff go away. Financial update. All right, this is the mandated finance department update for fiscal, what's been going on in fiscal 2025, revenue estimates for our budgeting purposes for fiscal 2026. We'll go through the levy limit, local receipts, cherry sheets, other revenue. Okay. My audio and video are off for Zoom. And I have an echo, so I can start playing Pink Floyd songs. It's a low-tech solution. We'll see if he's got a thick book in there or something.
Mick Jagger it for a minute there.
Checking 1, 2, 3. Do we turn this? All right. Everybody can hear me now without the technical difficulties. I just got back from the annual Mass Municipal Auditors and Accountants Association spring training. So I got in a car at about 1:30 and drove from Amherst to here. So I wasn't able to get here early enough to make sure all this works. They're a lively bunch, the auditors and accountants. Yes. Okay. So again, the update for 2025, the update revenue estimates for 2026, go through the levy limit, local receipts, cherry sheets, other revenue, and what we think, what our projection right now is for what might be available for the budget for fiscal 2026. And various side notes on, you know, explaining how we got to these numbers. And of course, the caveat on all of this is that these numbers change. Unfortunately, I don't have a crystal ball, and I can't look into the future and see exactly how much we'll have. Various things that change, well, we can go through them. All right, for the finance department, we finished the state reporting. The fiscal 24 books are closed. The 24 audit, actually, we should have that in hand. I didn't change that on the slide, but we should have that in hand probably by Monday morning, and it will be submitted. Also, the single audit will all be done well before the end of March. So free cash, retained earnings were certified. Free cash as of June 30th, 2024 is $28,343,997. Retained earnings for water sewer enterprise is $12,653,475. Last year, we had $34 million in free cash, roughly, but we used 14 million of it to fund the stabilization funds. And then we had about $1 million in turnbacks, and we had $6.2 million in excess local receipts, which is why we were able to take 34, drop it to 20, and then come back to 28 million. So, sure.
Member Rousseau?
Thank you. Could you tell us what turnbacks are?
When a department doesn't spend its whole budget, I mean, that's where free cash comes from. You estimate your revenue. If you get more revenue, obviously you'll make more, you'll have more free cash, but also in situations, for instance, police and fire will frequently have budgeted positions, but they're unable to be filled because there simply aren't policemen and firemen out there. So that can be a significant source of a turnback. We just didn't spend the whole budget. So, because, on the recap, the budget, what your appropriations have to match what you're taking in. So if you spend less than the appropriation, then that goes to free cash.
The Council Lazara.
Very quick question. Can you send us this presentation after the meeting?
What?
Can you send this presentation to
Oh,
us
yes,
after the
of
meeting?
course.
Thank you so much.
All righty.
I just had one question, Bob. Are you going to go into what the excess local receipts were?
I wasn't planning to do
Could you-
details on that, but I can easily send the council exactly what happened.
That would be helpful.
I know one big part of it, which I'll touch on further on in the presentation, was because interest rates remained high and our treasurer did a lot of work to make sure that we were, while keeping cash on hand to pay payroll and stuff like that, that everything else was invested in higher interest rate vehicles. And we still had a whole bunch of unspent ARPA money. So if you have an extra $20 million in ARPA money that has been allocated but hasn't yet been spent, it's sitting on our bank account, and that is general fund revenue. So that's a nice one there. I'll say this again later, but I do not expect for local receipts next year, which is where investment income comes into the picture. I don't expect what we're going to be getting in interest next year to be anywhere near what we got in fiscal 2024. But I can definitely go through the numbers and show exactly where all this money came from.
Yeah, I think especially hearing that that's coming from interest on cash on hand or interest on investments. Just knowing how much of that 6 million was from interest on cash we don't expect to have in the future. I'm just wondering how that excess local receipts affects our baseline revenue estimates for fiscal 26, essentially.
Right. Yes. All right.
Mr. President, I have a question.
Counselor Scarpelli.
Thank you. I apologize. I just didn't really know if you knew my hand was. I just have to, just for clarification purposes and move forward, just to say again, Bob, we're at $28 million again in free cash.
Yes,
That's what we have today, $28 million again.
yeah,
Okay.
28,343,997.
Thank you.
Straight from the Bureau of Accounts, that's what they say we've got. So there we are.
And just to clarify, so essentially the balance was 34 million at the end of on 6/30/23.
Right.
We appropriated 14 million, so that's a minus 14 million. And then there was a turn back, so underspending of $1 million, and then an unexpected overage in local receipts of 6 million, and a big portion of that was from interest that we hadn't expected to earn because interest rates were high.
Right.
Okay.
Then the other thing that would add into free cash is obviously, we have accounts receivable for tax billings and personal property tax, but that doesn't mean we're going to get it all in this year. It usually is around the same amount that we actually build out. But if for instance, if in 1 year people are in arrears, your accounts receivable goes down when they pay you off, but your receipts for that year are larger. Does that make any sense? I'm getting into the weeds on the tax recap and how the city is funded. So
Yeah, no, I just wanted to clarify because I think sometimes we didn't have $28 million of new money that was,
oh no,
it's a balance. We actually, the free cash balance decreased by $6 million.
Right.
All right, thank you.
2025 general fund budget was 189,407,845. Medford Public Schools received $83 million. And we keep an eye on all the budgets. We also, especially Medford Public Schools, we make sure that when we're getting into the end of the year, that nobody's going to be over budget. And that usually means me working with Noel and Jerry McHugh to make sure that all of the funds that might come in from grant money, those positions we've actually charged everything to the right places. And there are some year-end transfers that happen that. But right now we expect everything to be fine for the Medford Public Schools. Revenue estimates. I'll go over this. I would imagine that everybody here probably has a basic understanding of how we make these revenue estimates, but just to go over it again, Proposition 2.5, you take last year's levy limit, you multiply it by 1.025, and that's your levy limit for the next year. Once you've done that, you add in certified new growth. This is the levy limit itself is based on the prior year's levy limit. We know what that's going to be. Certified new growth is whatever the assessors can come up with to add to it. So right now, that is just an estimate, but it includes all sorts of basic things. If you have a lot, you subdivide it. Now you have 2 lots. It's worth more than it was. So that's certified new growth. And things as little, if you have a house and you put on an addition, there's a bathroom, that's new growth. Then the levy limit, that's self-explanatory. You put them together and that's what you can levy. Then we also have to estimate state aid, cherry sheets, Chapter 70, school aid, veterans benefits, charter school money. And that's, when we're doing that, we're doing the net of what the state aid will be and what the state assessments will be. We can go into that in a little bit. So fiscal year 2025, levy limit is 153,506,550. Proposition 2.5 increase is 3,800,000 837, 663, and 75 cents. I doubt we'll be able to capture the 75 cents just mathematically, but it shouldn't be too hard to deal with. Our current new growth estimate from Jared, our assessor, is $2.2 million. So our new capacity estimate is 159, 544, 213, 75. Local receipt. Did I not change this? Oh, yeah, no, 21, for fiscal 2025, local receipts were estimated at 124, 900. This year, we're estimating them at 500,000. Local receipts, the big ones are motor vehicle excise, 7 million bucks. I'm expecting that to be relatively flat. It increased a lot after the pandemic when people couldn't get cars or didn't want to buy a new car, but now people have bought a lot of their new cars. So, and every year you have a car, your motor vehicle excise goes down. So unless people rush out and buy a whole bunch of new cars, I'm expecting that to be pretty much flat. Hotel and meals taxes, those have been increasing slightly every year. So we're going to go up a little bit on that one. Building permits, again, that's another one. We hopefully people are building stuff, especially because if you get a building permit, that's one way the assessor figures out what new growth is going to be. He gets all the building permits and goes to the houses and says, hey, you just put an addition on, so your assessment goes up. And then, as I said, investment income, $2.5 million. I expect that's going to be less this year because of all the ARP money that we've actually spent. Anyway, local receipts for 2026, I'm estimating 21,500,000. Local receipts is one of those things that you can vary. It can vary a lot depending on economic conditions. So people in my position ordinarily try to make sure that we're doing a pretty conservative estimate of what it is. If you don't, and you get to recap time, the Department of Revenue can look at your actuals for the year and say, you're not going to make your revenue targets. And that means having to vote a whole new budget because the appropriations have to meet the revenues. So that's one place in the recap that we tend to be reasonably conservative. I try to make it as close as I can, but I will never sit there and say, okay, we made this much last year, now we're going to make more this year. I will never expect to make more than we did in the last year. I usually put it in to be less, just to be conservative, to make sure that if something actually happens in the economy, that we won't miss our revenue targets and then have to revote the whole budget based on the new numbers. So, cherry sheets. Initial proposal from the governor, which is the one that we use. Again, it tends to be the most conservative estimate of what we're going to get. Usually it's a little bit more, but that's not always the case. So estimated receipts, 35 million. Charges is close to 13 million. So the net cherry sheet revenue should be 22,358, 418, according to the governor's current proposal. If you don't know, cherry sheets go through the governor, and the House votes on what they think they should be, and the Senate votes on what they think they should be. And then we get the final numbers when everybody gets together and makes the deal. So we have 3 more iterations of what cherry sheet receipts might be. So that's another place where there's significant uncertainty about what we might actually end up with at the end of the year.
Member Graham?
Planning purposes for the cherry sheet, FY26 net cherry sheet.
No, sorry, that's a typo. That would have been the 2025 net cherry sheet, I believe.
Okay, so the 22.3 is what you're estimating
Yes,
for
that's
cherry
what
sheet.
I'm
Okay,
estimating.
thank you.
If you want, I have it's easy enough to get on the DOR website, what the cherry sheet numbers for the last 10, 15 years. I actually have a spreadsheet. When I'm doing the spreadsheet to put together the recap, I actually have the exact numbers from the last several years, so I can make a prediction on, where they're going.
A reduction in cherry sheets as you do your budget planning, or are you?
At this point, no. I'm
Okay.
using the governor's initial cherry sheet proposal is already out on the website. So we just go with that number because usually it's right around there, if not a little bit more.
Okay, perfect. I just wanted to clarify. Things are wild right now, so.
Okay.
Mhm.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any questions from the council on that?
No, sorry.
No, go ahead, Bob.
I can just comment too. I think most cities and towns use the governor's proposal because that's all we really have in the House and then the Senate and then joint conference. If anything changes, we're going to have to adjust.
Mhm.
Hopefully we just up and not down. And spent some time in the State House yesterday, so they are watching what's going on federally and are going to adjust accordingly depending on if and when. So we're going to just keep track of it as much as we can.
Mhm. Alrighty, so other revenue that the city receives, casino mitigation funds, these are transfers into the general fund to fund positions. Casino mitigation funds, 3 positions. We get money in from the sales of lots and cemetery lots and the perpetual care trust fund. So every year the treasurer sends us what the available revenue is from the trust, from the interest on the trust. And that gets added to the budget as a transfer in from the trust fund. Then there's indirect costs. Water and sewer enterprise fund is assessed for expenses budgeted in the general fund. AP, payroll, processing, healthcare. That's another number that we have to pay a lot of attention to make sure that we've got good estimates of what that might be. We don't at this time, we've been told that health insurance is going up by probably 10%, but we do not at this time, I believe, have the actual final numbers on what our health insurance costs are going to be next year. That could change. At the MMAA conference that I was just at, some communities are seeing increases of as much as 20% in their healthcare costs. There are many communities that are experiencing 12, 15%. And when you multiply 20% by what we're paying right now, which is, what is it, $25 million or something like that, that eats up a lot of your budget. So that's something we're working on very closely and definitely keeping an eye on. So this is pretty much the summary. If you can all see it without the caption. So you can see the breakdown of all these numbers. The 2025 levy limit, 153 million times 2.5 plus the new growth gives us the 159 million for property taxes. That flows to the next section. So we're saying 21.5 for local receipts, state aid, 35 million, indirect costs, sales of lots, et cetera, 218 million. Then below that, we have non-budgeted expenses. These appear on the recap page 2. They are non-budgeted, and they are the things like the cherry sheet assessments, which are going to be 12, which we're putting in the governor's numbers. Again, that's the breakdown of this net is $12.8 million. Tax title, it's a small amount, but that allows the treasurer to, do the legal work and for properties where the homeowner has not paid their taxes in a while. Snow and ice deficit, last year, it wasn't anywhere near that. I think it was $400,000, but we know we've had a little bit of snow this winter, so that's a legal deficit that you can put on the books. Right now, the estimate is $750,000. Hopefully with the warm weather, we won't be experiencing another huge snowstorm. Knock on wood. But right now, that's what it looks like our snow and ice deficit will be. That has to be raised on the recap. And then every year, it's good to keep a close eye on your overlay. This is the money that funds tax abatements. So I work with the assessor to see what's out there, and we total up how much money we actually have in overlay. And we put in what we think we might need in case things go against us and we have to, I think right now there are a couple of large projects where lawyers are involved and they want a big abatement. So that's something that I work with the assessor to make sure I have a good number, and we've put enough money into the overlays so that we have enough money to pay these if we need to. And that gives you the bottom line. It's roughly a little less than $205 million that we have available to spend at this point in time, as far as I know. Again, if you know where I could get a crystal ball so I can do this better, that would be great. Is this making sense to everyone?
Is that all of the, oh, looks like Paul wants to.
Yep, you have some more slides too, right? Member Rousseau?
Thank you.
Next slide.
I just, the state assessments, I did look it up, just shy of 8 million of that is actually charter tuition. Just wanted to point that out, not for you, you know that. And Councilor Lemming has his hand up.
I think Member Rousseau just made the point that 8 million of the state assessments is for charter schools. And go ahead, Matt, Councilor Lemming.
Thank you. I understand that this could be outside the purview of the budget. It could be like tied up in grants and stuff like that. But Mr. Dickinson, is there a way to get sort of a year-by-year number of the amount of money that the city receives from the federal government? Or are those statistics or trends handy anywhere?
Right now we're keeping a close eye on that. I'm trying to formulate a list of all the monies that we get from the federal government. I don't have an exact figure for that at this point in time, but I could probably get this. The single audit would have all of the big numbers for that.
Yep.
But I could look into putting that together.
And I can add to that, it's been a project we've been working on since January to try to pull the numbers from every department. We just recently gave everything to finance to kind of tidy up so we can get you a copy of what's currently we're receiving in federal funding. A lot of that is recurring, but of course there's some that are grants that are one time or over a several year period. But I think it would be a huge endeavor to go back years, but I think we can definitely get you a snapshot of what we're looking at now within the next several weeks. I know finance department's been working on trying to get that together in a readable format for us to just keep an eye on as these are such uncertain times.
Thank you. Even just a ballpark estimate of previous years and this year, if you have it. I understand it could be irresponsible to offer that now, but any information is appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Lemming. Councilor Lazaro.
Do you have an estimate for my own edification, because I can't remember, of new growth in prior years? Is this an average amount or a smaller amount or larger amount? It seems small to me, but.
Well, new growth really depends on the year. it also, quite frankly, depends on staffing. If, because in order to assess new growth, you have to actually physically go to the property and say, look, you've got an addition. They, our previous assessor worked very hard on making sure we got those numbers, and we're definitely keeping up with that. But it can vary a lot per year. It's straight on the recap. So if you want how much we got for the last 10 years, I can put that together really quite quickly. You can just go into Gateway and this is what it was. It's certified by the state. So once the state says you can put in this number, that's what you can put in. So.
And I can just add, we did look into that last year. I think we looked back about 20 years, and there's only been 3 years where it's been over 2 million, and that's been in the last 4 or 5.
Okay, great. That's helpful. Thank you. I appreciate that. Does that not work? Okay, good. I was going to add what the mayor added, but also will add that as Bob stated, as Finance Director Dickinson stated, this is a particularly challenging year because we have transitioned and we have a new chief assessor. Jared Yajin has become the chief assessor, which we're very excited about. We are working towards hiring the assistant assessor, but we're also in a reevaluation year. So it's a significant amount of work and we have a vacancy. So just to kind of complement, but we've been in the ballpark of $2.5 million. This year, we're just being mindful that there are elements that are a little bit beyond our control, despite how hard we've been trying to move that wheel. So anyway, thank you.
Moving along. Yep. So as in previous years, the Assistant Finance Director, Chief of Staff, and Mayor have been in correspondence with all of the department heads about the fiscal 26 preliminary numbers. And the Assistant Finance Director really does go through these budgets with a fine-toothed comb to make sure that, any unspent categories from prior years, we look at them, we make sure that, that is in there. Again, there's things like police salaries, for instance. We may have positions available in fire, police and fire salaries that can't be filled, but we still have to be cognizant of the fact that we might be able to fill them. So we have to have the budget there in case we can. So getting the people for the unfilled positions is important. This will be, obviously, this work is ongoing until the final budget is submitted to the council, which should be at the end of May. So, and yeah, I guess our deadline is Friday, May 30th, to get all this stuff in front of you. Back to health insurance, yes. The fiscal 2025 budget was $28 million. So now we're over $31 million estimated in health insurance. That's significant. If you think about how we raise revenue, the big one is Prop 2.5 and new growth. If we can get 2.5%, we know we can get, and then new growth. Historically, it's been on the average, since I've been here, on the average of 3.5% to 4% total that our levy limit has gone up. So if you have a significant part of your budget that is going up 10%, and historically the amount you get from your tax levy goes up around 4%, that's a big gaping hole in the budget. It's going to be difficult to weather that, and hopefully in subsequent years, it won't be going up that much, but that's one thing we're working very hard to figure out how to resolve. Workers' compensation for this year, it's on target, except Workers' compensation, the problem with trying to estimate that is we'll have workers who have been out because of injuries for a long time, and the HR department and legal will be working on making, saying, okay, if we give you this much, have we settled this claim? We had a very large settlement in July. It was $165,000. So at that point, that's probably going to be over budget by the time we get to the end of the year. Pension obligations. I'm on the retirement board, and we have the current schedule that we have keeps the increase that we have to pay every year to around 3.5% to 4%, which is very good because it keeps up. Like I said before, if your tax revenue is going up by roughly 4% when you add in the new growth, if you have your pension obligations going up more than that, that's a problem. This way, we'll be paying more every year, but hopefully it will only take up the same portion of the budget that it did last year. And of course, contractual increases. When we're putting together the budget, we have to look at what the contracts say. That's non-negotiable. We signed a contract. So if it says that in July 1st, everybody in the clerical union gets another 2.5%, well, that's going to go up. So those are the main things that we look at very closely when we're doing the budget. Revenue adjustments increase local receipts by a little bit. It's conservative. Again, I have to be able to, I can't go out on a limb on this without having the DOR call me and say, hey, Bob, do you really think you're going to make that much more money? So I keep them conservative. I think right now we're at putting 400,000 into overlay for 2026. And that was an adjustment. We think we can weather that. That's probably gives us a nice enough cushion in the overlay so we can pay for any large abatements we might have to pay. And that's also, it's an adjustable number in the recap, but when my snow and ice just jumped by $350,000, then I'm like, okay, well, maybe we can drop this by a little. Again, this is just an illustration of how when you're putting the budget together, there's a lot of moving pieces to it, and a lot of them can change. So I did change that number. The latest new growth estimate is $2.2 million. This is another kind of complicated accounting detail. Some projects that are not finished or some nonprofit organizations don't pay property taxes. They pay what's known as pilot or payments in lieu of taxes. Now, there's a development through the Mystic Valley Development Corporation that will be moving off of pilot payments. They've been paying us pilot payments for, I think, 10 years. That's going to be part of the $2.2 million that we're expecting in new growth, because we will now put them on the tax rolls, which is good because then every year we can add that to our levy. But those pilot payments won't be as large anymore because that was a significant chunk of what we were getting in pilot payments. So that's part of local receipts. So that's why I try to be conservative with local receipts.
I just had one question on that, Bob. And I think for folks, this is essentially the River's Edge development.
River's Edge, yes.
Done through the brownfields and
right.
A complicated thing. Are the pilot payments more than what we will end up receiving in taxes from the properties?
No.
Okay.
We will get more in taxes than we were getting in pilot payments, and and that adds to our levy. So every year, 2.5% is tacked onto that.
So it's a net gain, but
it's
it's
a net
shifting
gain
into new growth.
It's just shifting. It's shifting into new growth from local receipts.
Okay, thank you.
And again, when I started here, when we're reviewing the budgets, we've been very careful to make sure that large capital expenses aren't included in in operating budgets. So if the DPW, for instance, needs a new truck, we want to keep that separate because we want to keep the operating expenses being things like paper supplies, salt, stuff that is consumable. In general, the idea is that if you have an asset that's going to last more than 5 years, 5 years or more, that you actually keep it out of the operating budget and you pay for things like that by using free cash or other sources. And again, we very closely review all the budgets going back about 5 years to see if everybody's spending all their money and what they're spending it on. We've been centralizing the facilities costs and information technology, trying to get the budgets in the right places to make sure that if there's savings or efficiencies we can get from that we actually capitalize on those. That would be, for instance, making sure that over the years, the IT department has done things like make sure we have one license from Adobe for Adobe Acrobat, and it's not shared, like different departments didn't go out and get their own license. So that way we can have some savings by consolidating it and we have a better bargaining position. And, I think that's all I've got. I wish I was better at the technology, quite frankly. So yeah, that's a overview. I hope I didn't bore anybody too much because it's a lot of numbers, and that's really what that's what I do. So okay, just enough to give you. And this is really, again, I can't stress enough that this is an ongoing process. We worked with department heads, we look at their budgets, we make sure the budgets are the right size to do what is necessary. When we work with the department heads to do this, we have, okay, what did you have last year? These are contractual increases for your staff. This is what you spent last year on expenses. And then below that will be, this is stuff that we know. For instance, obviously the GIC, if we see 10% in our health insurance costs, we know that's going to happen. It could be 9%, it could be 11%, but we have to put that in there because we have to pay that. There's nothing we can do about it. Software increases. Every year, the software admins that runs the general ledger, every year they give us an increase. We try to negotiate with them to keep it as small as possible, but that has to be in the finance department budget. We have to pay for it. And then below that, we would have the department head say, okay, if I have another position, it'll cost this much, but that position can do this, that, and the other thing. And that's the kind of the departmental wish list. So that's essentially what we work on for the next couple of months. And then obviously I'm updating the revenue estimates pretty much weekly.
Member Rousseau?
All right, thank you. So if the House, if the House and Senate actually ever pass a budget before December 31st, which does happen, right? Maybe once in a while. June 30, what did I say?
You said December 31st.
I meant June 30.
It's like, I don't think
Sorry.
they've ever done it before December 31st, so I know those numbers.
Sorry,
but-
I did mean June 30. You can have, all of our documentation, all of our budget can be done and signed off before they have actually.
They've actually finalized the numbers. Yes, that can happen.
Good. I mean, I assume that's what we do in years when they're working in July. And when they're working in July and pretend we get more money, that just comes in and is just excess, or does that go into a specific, it just goes into the general fund?
It's, sorry, put on my long distance goggles. That's just general revenue of the city.
Okay.
So it would go to the general fund, and if everything works out correctly, that falls to free cash for that fiscal year.
Thank you.
I can't remember if they actually agreed to it last year or not, but last year there was at least an attempt to have a consensus on the local aid figures before June 30th, even though the final budget hasn't passed. I don't remember if that was just a request that the MMA put out or if they actually managed to do that. Yeah, Nina's shaking. I can't remember either, but that has been something that they've tried to do in the past to give us a little bit more certainty, or that we've at least asked for. And is that you, Erica?
Yes,
Member Reinfeld.
thank you. Thank you for the presentation. It was, I found it clear. I had to look up a few words, but not too many, so thank you.
I tried.
I have a hyper local question. I'm wondering if on the city side, we're going to see some non-standard increases in departments. My understanding is some of the city departments were a little restrained last time in order to fill some gaps in the school budget, which I very much appreciate. And I'm wondering if we're going to see those come back of people who unevenly increasing within the city. That might be a question for the mayor. It might also be premature, but I know some of the departments in the city, I don't want to say sacrificed, but their ask wasn't as big because we had some significant gaps in the school budget to fill. And I know the override covered some of those, but I'm curious what the impact is going to be on the allocations.
I can answer that, Member Reinfeld. As best I can now, Nina and I, after Courtney has kind of gathered the budgets together, Courtney's our budget director, are starting to meet with each department head and understand those types of scenarios, because it wasn't just last year that we pulled from the city to help better fund the schools. I think it's a priority of the council, myself, and the schools to fund in the school committee to make sure our schools are funded properly, to make sure our libraries funded properly. But having said that, I thank you for asking the question, because yes, we have had tough budget side on the city side with people that were upset because they couldn't do or the things they wanted to do. So we're going to take a hard look and see what can be added, while at the same time still trying to prioritize our schools. We're very lucky to have the override pass. But I still, even though schools have a number, if there's additional funding, which we always try to do, we want to make sure we meet the needs of the schools. That's just an important piece of puzzle. So yes, it's a balance, and we have 25 departments, and we are going to try to first add back some of things we had to cut, and then see what room there is to maybe grow in a few spots. And we always know we can usually add a position or two, and there's a long list of 20 plus positions that are needed within the departments. But I think Nina and I have our CFO have a good pulse on how the departments are operating and which ones need to see a little more growth in that 1%, 2%, 3%, and which ones can sustain. So it's a work in progress. We hope to finish those meetings by the end of April, so that we can prepare and get the council their budget beginning in May, which is, I think, in the budget ordinance first week in May. So it's still a work in progress.
Thank you. And then, of course, there's the outstanding question that I know nobody can answer about what the federal landscape is going to look like and what is going to come or not come to the city, what compensations the states have. And of course, we'll be talking with the school finance director about contingencies and what things look like within the school budget, because we get obviously a lot of federal grants and a lot of federal aid, and questions around, is this going to be, if we find ourselves with less money, is this going to be an across the board reduction, or is it going to be targeted to particular areas if we have to make those decisions, which I very much hope we don't, of course, but just recognizing that on the floor.
Correct. And if the state is going to budget conservatively, from what I understood from my meetings yesterday, in case they need to plug gaps like Medicaid, which will be in the billions, then yeah, it's a guessing game of what the state's going to cover and what the cities and towns are going to have to cover. So it could be substantial, and we're just praying and hoping that it is not.
Thank you.
Any questions from members of the council at this time? I have a couple.
Okay.
Bob, the pension obligations are based on the actuarial schedule, right?
Yes.
And that's a fully funded in 2033.
It's 2033 now.
That'll be a good year.
Yes. Don't forget about OPEB.
Yeah, exactly, right?
So,
yeah, I'm sure
oh,
they'll
that's
come
what a
right
lot of
back.
cities and towns are doing. They're fully funding, the pension obligations are required to be fully funded by 2040. But PERAC, the pension agency, would really like them to be funded much sooner than that. And we're even sooner than that. That's 2033 that we should be fully funded. And that the excess, off the top of my head, I think that will save the city something like $20 million a year.
Yeah.
But at that point, we should be taking a significant amount of that money and funding the other post-employee benefits.
And
So,
they're going to come up with some sort of similar program and schedule for that.
yeah, well, it's not, I don't think it's required yet, but it's a good idea.
Yeah.
So hopefully, once we get all that done, these programs should be self-sustaining.
So 2060, 20.
I doubt I'll actually live to see it, but you know, it's good to keep pushing at it.
Yeah.
So
The ACFRs for fiscal 23 and 24, when will those be available on the city
the
website?
2023 is on the website right now.
Great.
And 2024, I have to review it tomorrow. I'm the last person to actually have to review it, but we have it in hand. And once I review it and say, this is great, I sign the transmittal letter, and we get the final document, and that will go right on the website and be sent out.
Great.
So
It's the combined comprehensive
annual
financial.
comprehensive financial report.
Yeah. It's the 100-something page document that, yeah, shows all of the annual audits, how everything was calculated, fund balances.
Mhm.
So actually really helpful read to understand everything the city does.
Right. Or if you
and-
have insomnia, it's a very useful document.
Keeps me up at night, I'll tell you that.
It would, wouldn't it?
But I just think it's useful for people to know that
Yeah.
that document shows essentially down to the dollar where
Right.
the money of the city goes.
Right.
And it's a level of accounting that most institutions, businesses, and others in this country are not asked to, meet.
Mhm.
So, even in the nonprofit industry that I'm in, there's, a 2%. Basically, if it's 2% off, that's pretty much fine, is the
Mhm.
general rule. Some organizations choose to go down to the dollar, but cities and towns have to. It has to be independently audited every year.
Mhm.
And these reports show exactly where every dollar went. And I just think that's valuable information for people to understand that those are the standards that municipalities are held to, and we meet those standards. So thank you for the work on it.
Yeah. And again, these are all available on the city's website in the finance department, going back many, many years. You can see where we were in 2019, if you'd like to. So,
Great. My last request of a council member, if they could just make a motion just to request that Director Dickinson send us a breakdown of the local receipts for fiscal 23, 24, the 25 estimate, and the 26 proposed / estimate.
mhm.
Motion by Councilor Callahan, seconded by Councilor Lazaro. Mr. Clerk, when you have the motion. You call the roll.
Counselor Callahan. Vice President Collins.
Yes.
Counselor Lazaro. Counselor Lemming.
You know, we weren't
Yes.
expecting to get a dog at the time.
Counselor Scarpelli.
Yes, sorry.
Singh.
Yes.
President Bears.
Yes, 70 affirmative, none negative, motion passes. It was just for us. Do you want to, you don't have to.
Members of the school committee, is there a motion? No motion from the school committee. Okay.
We'll send it to you.
Trust you.
Great. Is that what your mic was on for? Great. Is there anything else that you'd like to share at this time?
No, we're up to date on the audits, and we're working hard on the budgets, and we'll be back.
Oh, we'll be seeing lots of you the next 3 months. It's
Mm.
our time to see you every week,
Yeah.
almost.
And as always, if you have specific questions and if you're in the building, my door is always open, or send me an email and I will attempt to get the information that you need.
Great. Thank you, Director. I'll turn over to Vice Chair Graham.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from the school committee? I just wanted to say thank you, Director Dickinson and Nina, for obliging us and helping put this meeting together. I think it's really important that we all hear a picture of what the city's finances are. So I'm really glad that we're here doing this, creating a space to talk plainly about the plain numbers, even though there's lots of them, so that when people have questions, there's a place that we can point them to say, you know, we collectively, as the elected officials in Medford, are proactively asking for this information and getting this information. And to President Bears' point, there's an incredible amount of accounting and detail that has to be provided in the spirit of transparency. So I think that's always really important to reinforce. So I'm just glad that we're here. I'm glad that it's only been about an hour. And I just wanted to say thank you.
Yes. Well, you're welcome, and thank you. Thank you for listening.
Take Erica's first.
Okay.
We do have to vote
We
twice.
do have to adjourn twice. So there's a motion from the school committee to adjourn by
I have-
member
Mr.
Reinfeldt.
President.
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry,
Counselor
Chair.
Scarpelli, go ahead.
I would, before we adjourn, I think that if Chair Graham and President Bears would sing happy birthday to school committee member John and Topper, I think would be a fitting way to end. Thank you.
Oh, my God.
You can motion to not accept the song, member on top of.
Just like
Okay.
okay.
Turn all the mics on. It doesn't work.
Is it just the two of us? Are
I
we
think it's
doing
just
this?
the two of us. John, you have to go on video so we can see you be embarrassed.
You're no. Okay.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday,
member
dear
and Tapa.
Tom.
Yes.
Happy birthday
Oh.
to you.
Yay.
Oh, was I unmuted for that? Sorry, I'm yelling at my dad because he said something about it. Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And I'm not there because I'm a snob about my birthday. I'm not there because I just got back from New Orleans from a conference. So
Oh.
thank you everyone for doing the work and for meeting today and talking about the budget.
Thank you. And I will just say, I'm not there for my birthday because I was in New Orleans. It doesn't sound exactly the way, maybe.
Zach, will you please explain to this kid? Please explain to him. They had emergency foot surgery, but not, you know.
That's your motion.
So the school committee has a motion to adjourn by member Reinfeldt. Is there a second? Seconded by member Olopade. Member Rousseau, can you call the roll?
Member Branley,
Yes.
Member Graham,
Yes.
Member Ntapa,
Yes.
Member Olopade,
Yes.
Member Reinfeldt,
Yes.
Member So yes, Mayor Longo, I believe is absent.
6 in the affirmative, 1 absent. The motion passes.
Is there a motion to adjourn? Motion by Council Lozaro to adjourn, seconded by Councilor Callahan. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Council Callahan. Vice President Collins,
Yes.
Council Lozaro, Council Lemming,
Yes.
Council Scarpelli,
Yes.
Council Singh,
Yes.
President Bears.
Yes, 6 in the affirmative, 1 in the negative. The motion passes and the meeting is adjourned.
Thanks, everyone.